Response to Instruction and Intervention, otherwise known as RTII, is a system for school-wide change that enhances education for all students. Students are exposed to an evidence-based core curriculum and undergo periodic screening to evaluate their risk levels for academic difficulty. These assessments help teachers and other personnel understand which students need more or less help in areas such as reading, math, or behavior. Closely tied to each assessment is the ability to use results to make informed decisions about the instructional placement of school-aged children. The Derry Township School District in Hershey, Pennsylvania, utilizes RTII. Fundamental to the success of RTII in Hershey Elementary School is the team that organizes and supports the use of universal screening, database decision-making, and intervention implementation. We sat down with key members of this team to further understand how they use this framework to best serve all students in the area of reading. An important component of effective RTII models is universal screening. Universal screening is conducted to identify or predict students who may be at risk for poor learning outcomes. Universal screening measures should be brief, administered with all students, and followed by additional testing or progress monitoring to corroborate students' risk status.
Our K-5 universal screening measures are DIBELS, and in the past few years we have looked at integrating additional screeners because we have found that we were missing students who need intervention, as well as picking up students who may not have needed it. So we needed something that was more sensitive than DIBELS.
At Derry Township School District, the RTII team added additional reading measures to the existing universal screening process in order to more accurately identify students at risk and to pinpoint specific areas of need.
And we found that a lot of our students were missing that component of literacy is phonological awareness.
Phonological awareness is the ability to recognize and work with sounds in spoken language. It is the foundation for learning to read and precedes decoding skills, or the ability to pair sounds with letters. Phonological awareness includes a number of skills ranging in difficulty, starting with identifying separate words and growing an understanding of separate syllables within words.
Where you have basic syllable levels, it's very, very low on the scale, on the scope and sequence of phonological awareness. Should be filled in like pre-K, K years. When you start to say that to grades 4 and 5 teachers, they become alarmed. And they think, well, why are we having these deficits showing up in 4 or 5, and why are you teaching them on this pre-K, K level? So they had to come to a common understanding of knowing that it doesn't mean that this is pre-K, K material. This is when they should have been filled in. Since those skills were not filled in pre-K, K, they now have these deficits. So when they're now seeing multisyllabic words and words in science and social studies class, they can't keep up because they're so foreign to them and they don't even know how to break them down.
Deficits in phonological awareness prevent students from demonstrating growth in overall reading skills. These deficits cannot always be discovered from screening measures designed to assess overall reading accuracy and fluency.
Weren't. So for phonological awareness, we moved to an assessment from the core assessment book. It was phonological segmentation, and it started at words in a sentence, syllables, phonemes. That was our first try with implementing that. All kindergarten and first grade students had that this year. Next year, we're going to move to something more sensitive using The Past by David Kilpatrick. It's more discrete in its skills and gives us a better sense of where the student's really breaking down.
In addition to phonological awareness, the team found deficits in the areas of encoding and decoding. Encoding involves using individual sounds to build and write words. Decoding involves translating printed words to sounds or reading.
We looked at adding 3 key points, something that went deeper in phonological awareness, an encoding piece for spelling to see how well the students had mastered those skills to apply the spelling patterns, and a decoding survey that was timed to see how accurate and automatic students were with different spelling patterns. Those three pieces combined, I felt, gave us a good picture of how those students were doing.
WIN stands for What I Need. It is a designated 30-minute time period built into the school day that is dedicated to reading instruction. Students are grouped based on their needs.
Yeah. At the older grades, 2nd and 3rd grade, we implemented a spelling inventory given to all 2nd and 3rd grade students. It really showed us how well the students were able to apply those phonics skills. It helped us identify what wing groups they would go into, whether they still needed more phonics skills or if they had those mastered. And it helped us differentiate between those students who would be in the high group and those students who needed more practice with those skills. The decoding piece was a timed assessment. This year we used the phonics reading placement test. Next year we will move to decoding survey. It looks at more discrete skills, and rather than whether you have the word right or wrong, it looks at the parts that you were incorrect, similar to a spelling inventory. And so we got much more information from that.
With higher elementary grades, the team also utilized a measure to look at reading comprehension.
As the students begin to progress through the grade levels, and ORF becomes the only measure that is being done, we definitely needed to put some different pieces in to really look at where might they have breakdowns. Were they just fluent readers, or was their comprehension high? So another piece that we looked at was the Moby Max reading level assessment to look for comprehension for these students as well. And that was helpful in grades 2 through 5. To help us determine what their needs might be.
The process of collecting and analyzing screening data takes a team approach.
We start with our big SWAT team that does benchmark with every student. And then we have a smaller SWAT team that will go in and do these additional assessments. And some are done with every student. Some we target students depending on their benchmark with DIBELS, especially as the kids get older. Then all that information is compiled into a spreadsheet that then is color-coded, and we're able to see where the breakdowns are happening. And in our intervention planning meetings, it helps us to identify what is the best placement for their wing groups and needs for intervention.
Intervention planning meetings, also known as IPMs, are held multiple times throughout the school year, depending on the content area and grade. At these meetings, participants review the progress of all students, plan instructional changes and/or strategies, and flexibly group students to best meet their individual needs.
We have meetings 3-4 times a year with teachers, and we were able then to bring in the information that we found, share the information. We actually put it in a Google sheet that is all color-coded so that the teachers can easily understand if the skill is mastered or not, and if they're working toward proficiency or if it's a deficit.
Participants at these meetings include the principal, assistant principal, literacy coach, intervention specialists, classroom teacher, special education teacher, school counselor, and school psychologist. To maximize efficiency, a line of inquiry is used as a guide to determine cause of the deficit and corresponding intervention.
We started with a really tight line of inquiry so that we were sure that we stayed focused on those questions as we were working through the process. It's loosened up a bit. Well, there are times when we say, do we need to bring that line of inquiry back out to make sure that we are spending adequate time talking about our students, making sure we're collecting the information, making sure we're trying the interventions that are discussed for a period of time to see whether or not they work.
The line of inquiry directs the team to 1. Quickly review the student's intervention plan, 2. Compare new data to present grade level goals and appropriate benchmark for grade and time of year, 3. Determine rate of improvement, 4. Decide whether the student should receive a different intervention, and 5. Set a measurable goal for the student. Using this framework allows for specific, meaningful discussion of student data, which leads to better informed student groups and outcomes.
Christopher was imitating. His ORF was 100, doing grade level work in her classroom. Same with Claire. 116. Both of them are doing grade level work. Can probably look at on-level groups for them.
Okay.
And we'll see. They'll do spelling inventories and stuff at the beginning of the year too.
Those were those kiddos that were kind of like Griffin, yet not quite as severe. Their ORF was high, but they still needed some phonics work.
In years past, students were grouped according to one screening score.
So the way we used to group the students was just by going through our benchmarks that we used in the beginning of the year. And if a student did not make benchmark, then they were placed in tier 2 or tier 1, depending on how far below benchmark they were. When we adapted a phonological awareness test and then a phonics test, we were able to see that those needs were taking priority over our ORF scores that we were using before. And we were able then to backtrack, fill in these deficits quite quickly, especially with phonological awareness, and then see these kids were really taking off.
Screening assessments are used to assign students to a WIN group according to their needs. Students displaying on-level reading skills will participate in a Tier 1 WIN group taught by a general education teacher. Students with greater deficits will participate in a Tier 2 group taught by a reading specialist.
We have an intensive intervention group in Tier 2 that is instructed by our reading intervention specialists. Those are usually students who are a year and a half to 2 years behind their peers. Depending on the grade level, depends on the interventions. And we have multiple intervention specialists providing intervention at the same time, so we're able to really tailor the intervention based on the students. For example, we had a first grade group this year, and based on the additional assessments, we knew they still needed to work just on consonant sounds. So before they even went into the main interventions, they worked on those skills.
The collected data also informs decisions about Tier 1 placement for students, which allows flexible grouping based on strengths and deficits for on-level readers.
So once the intervention specialists have their groups, we usually have 2 classroom teachers who will then take the next level of students up. Depends on the group. They're usually getting just about grade level work, but some are getting replacement with phonics for reading. And then we have our on-level groups, and then we also have our highest students. And the assessments have also helped to identify those students that are much higher than the rest of their peers.
Administrative support is vital to a thriving RTII framework.
As an administrator, supporting the RTI process is very important. It's crucial to its success. From getting substitutes for our teachers to make sure that they can get there in a timely manner, to making sure everybody's on board, to really understanding why this process is so important, the kind of information that we're going to get out of it, and what we do with that information. So I want to be involved, I need to be involved, and what's nice in our structure is if it's not me as the principal being involved, I know that my assistant principals can be involved. While it is something that we make a priority because we believe that we're going to get the best outcomes for our children.
In addition, it is important to support teachers who are an essential part of the team. If teachers understand the value of additional measures, the process becomes easier to implement.
We're really trying to get the teachers to have more ownership over their reading student scores so that they're able to analyze and know what skills they have and what skills they really need to work harder on. So a piece that every 4th and 5th grade teacher will be doing next year is they will all be giving the spelling inventory to every 4th and 5th grade student, not just Tier 2. And then the teachers are going to have to score them, which I'll have to go in and teach them how to score, and then they will be placing all of their data on a spreadsheet.
There are several practices that are helpful for schools looking to improve their RTII framework.
I think it's, again, being very planful, having dialogue with all stakeholders, top down, making sure this is something we believe is the best for our kids, how we're going to accomplish it, and then taking those first steps. It may not be perfect the first year. Ours wasn't. Then reflecting, how can we get better? What's working, what's not working, and what are our results that we're seeing? Is it truly helping us to work through the interventions, look at our interventions, and see success for those kiddos.